Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to answer the question of what is the right 1e4 repertoire for you. Now, of course, I do have some skin in the game, but I am also going to point out which resources are going to be better for different levels of player. So, for example, I know that one of the very first resources that I used when I was trying to learn 1e4 was white was this book Starting Out 1e4 by Neil MacDonald. And one thing you'll notice with a lot of the E4 repertoire books is that they will often recommend quite mainline systems. For example, I remember that he was recommending the open Sicilian in pretty much all of the cases against D6, E6, and knight to C6. So, okay, even though it was called a starting out book, meaning it's aimed more at players like 2000 and below, there was a somewhat more advanced book in the series, definitely giving some somewhat theoretically critical continuations. I remember, for example, there was some lines where he was even recommending stuff like the English attack. It was a long time ago since I read the book, but this is sort of one of the things I remember. He was often, going for this kind of like English attack style approach in a lot of the different variations, which I think is actually a pretty good recommendation, in fact. But it's also true there were other lines I played which I sort of felt not very comfortable in. Granted, it's probably more due to the fact that I didn't study the lines super deeply as such. I was like read through them blindfold while traveling and this sort of thing, or just in my spare time. But I remember, for example, he also recommended the Scotch game, and that was a suggestion that sort of didn't work that well for me in my own games. Again, it may be more a stylistic factor, but one thing I've noticed with the Scotch is in a lot of cases you are giving black a sort of lead in development after knight f6 or indeed even bishop c5. So it means in the short term, black gets a little bit of an initiative, and if you're one of these players who, like the vast majority of chess players, find it much easier to attack than to defend, well, then the Scotch may not necessarily be like the perfect opening, like from a practical perspective to go for. And I remember he also suggests other things like, for example, knight d2, the Tarrasch against the French, which is actually a line I was playing quite successfully later, and I was even considering recommending it for my own course before I found an approach that I sort of fit better with the other lines I recommend. But yeah, in short, like the Starting Out E4, it was definitely not a bad book for me to kind of get introduced to 1E4 and to like pick up some ideas, but the lines were like quite mainline, and after reading them, I still didn't really feel comfortable playing the positions. I felt like there was still so much more to learn, and when I would play it in Blitz, my opponents would just seem to know what they were doing better than me somehow. So that was not my first experience with an E4 repertoire. Another one that was also quite popular when I was in my early teenage years was this book, Chess Openings for White Explained, which was by Zinzatashvili, Perelstein, and Albert. And actually, they sort of gave some suggestions where I know, for example, one of the recommendation I gave that's actually the same as, well, at least for the first four moves as the one I give in my Crush Sub 800 E4 course is actually the Scotch Gambit with knight f3, knight c6. And I did actually play this in some Blitz games, but I also noticed that there were some cases where like they would give moves that just weren't really the best ones. Like to give you an example, after knight f6 and e5. I remember this because I got this in so many of my games on, at that time, it was the Internet Chess Club that was the big chess server, and you're not the, let's say, graveyard that is today. But seriously though, after knight f6, e5, I would often face this move of knight g4. And okay, in my course, I show you that the best move for white is castles, and actually it's the only good move in this position where you do get a small advantage there if you play it correctly. However, this is not what was recommended in the Chess Openings for White Explained book. Instead, they recommended the move of Queen e2 here. And unfortunately, Queen e2 is just not really a very good move in this position. I'll just show you why just quickly. So Queen e2, black has to move Queen e7, and after Bishop f4, black just has a lot of good ways to play, but I can just go d6 or f6 to quickly eliminate white center, and your rising ending of ending is even easier to play for black, as I found out the hard way in some of my online Blitz games. They're recommending the Grand Prix attack as well, knight c3 f4, which is actually something I have recommended in another course of mine, play 1e4 like Hikaru, after seeing Nakamura have these great results in his own games. I ultimately found the approach actually even more effective than the Grand Prix attack, actually a lot more effective than it at the sub 2000 level, but I'll get onto that a little bit later. But there are also some other recommendations just didn't really work well. Like, for example, their lines that they gave within the winner with Bishop d2. Like, again, Bishop d2 is not such a bad move. I actually recommend it in my play e4 like Hikaru course, but the lines I gave as a follow-up were often just giving worse positions for white according to the computer. So yeah, not really a very good line, and there are a lot of other gaps which I'm not get to delve into. But the thing is, some of the suggested lines were actually quite decent, I think, in the book. But the problem was that there was just intellectual dishonesty of just like intentionally not showing the best moves in various key positions. And given they were marketing as like the one chess book you need for the rest of your life for the openings, it's not, really, wasn't really gelling in that way. So that was like my second E4 resource I sort of tried learning in terms of repertoire. After that, I kind of sort of gave up a little bit on like complete all-in-one like E4 repertoires for white for quite some time, because what would happen is there'd be some lines there I didn't particularly like. They didn't all sort of appeal to me so much. Or what would happen is like I prefer to just like use one book, like as I got to, 200-300 plus. I found it worked better like to go through one book just on one particular variation and then really master that variation, kind of build my own repertoire based on the lines that I like to play. So, for example, like I found that what was a big breakthrough for me in terms of playing as a Sicilian was I was struggling for so many years to really understand the open Sicilian, but the book Dismantling the Sicilian by Jesus de la Villa really helped quite a lot, because in so many lines you were just playing the English attack, playing the same way every time, and having that sort of thematic feature of, okay, you're playing similar types of positions against similar ideas each time, rather than have to remember something different, very different against each individual system. But definitely a big advantage at work that really helped me to go from being stuck at 200 plus for years to making that jump to 300 and FIDE Master in early 2010, which happened my last year of high school as well. Now, also, I do want to mention a few other more recent resources as well. And okay, you can't mention every single 1E4 repertoire, but I will mention some of the more popular ones. I know, for example, that one of the books that kind of got me into also looking more into E4 at different times was Paramain Negi's Grandmaster Repertoire series on 1E4, where in his first volume he focused on the knight c3 line in the French, and also he covered knight c3 against the Caro-Kann as well with this, incidentally. And the thing with his book, though, is it's aimed at like quite advanced players. Like it's very dense and detailed analysis, certainly explaining lines quite well, but really aimed, let's say, at players at least 2000 and honestly probably more at 200 plus level in reality. Like I remember actually, entering these books in cover to cover manually in ChessBase, and it would take me a lot of days to get it done. Of course, for the vast majority watching this, it's not really going to be a great fit. And, I feel that's also kind of true just in general of the lifetime repertoires, that these resources on chess will, of course, like objectively very high quality resources. But I think unless you're rated like at least 1800, maybe even 900, 2000, it's just going to be like a lot more detail than you really need in order to master the lines. And they're also going to generally focus on variations of sort of like the main line at grandmaster level more so than what you're going to actually face like in your own games at a club level or in your online chess games. So the one other resource I'll also mention, because I feel like it's actually the most similar one to like the Crush Designers E4, is actually the Gotham Chess like E4 New York style course. Now I don't actually own that course, so I can't like really like comment on it in terms of an actual review, but based on the sample I did notice it actually is a somewhat similar spirit of repertoire to lines I give in my Crush sub 1800 with E4. For example, suggesting things like the Vienna with knight c3 and f4. Actually, repertoire I give here is very similar to one I actually recommended in my Play E4 like Hikaru course, where I noticed that a lot of the times opponents below 2000 will get into a bad position in these sort of sharper lines going to f4. I will say I think that the line I recommend against the E4, E5 is even more effective as a point machine below 1800. But of course, the fact I recommend this before is certainly an advertisement in that case. Also, he gives other lines against the Sicilian. He gives a couple of different shortcuts. Admittedly, they've escaped my memory right at this moment. But I remember, there's sort of more sidelines you could say, like just trying to reduce one's theoretical workload and, get more of a like sort of creative position. And definitely a resource where like, if you like playing aggressive attacking chess and you're sort of, let's say, rated like below 1600, maybe even below 1800, then it's definitely like quite a fun resource, which is quite nice stylistically. But I will say one big advantage over with Crush sub 800 with E4 is it is really specifically targeted like at the moves you're going to face most often below 1800 level. And also, really every single element is focused in that way. And it's also perhaps a good segue for me to just share basically the sort of cornerstones of who this Crush sub 800 with E4 course really aimed for. So whether it's going to be right for you or whether you should indeed go for one of the other resources I mentioned a bit earlier. So basically, this repertoire is really aimed at maximizing your score against players rated below 1800. This is referring to the online ratings, to be clear, not the FIDE ratings as such. if you want to do a rough translation, I would say it probably would be like about maybe 1600 FIDE, maybe a bit over 1600 USCF. So basically this level, like if you are not yet at a 1600 like FIDE rating, or even let's say if you are like above 1800 online rating, but you're still not winning as many games against 1800 players as you would like, against how many players you would like to, and you want to really maximize that score, then this will basically show you how to. One thing patterns I noticed, if you want to know about the different types of weaknesses that and mistakes that people are typically making against a repertoire, but also in their games in general, is things like, let's say, missing like forks. Like I notice a lot of forking traps come up like in the lines that come up most often against my suggested recommendation with E4. Another common mistake also your opponents will make, both in general, but especially against this repertoire I present, is also that they will often make exchanges of pieces or pawns that just end up being good for you. Because a lot of people, like what they will do is they'll kind of just make an exchange without really thinking about, okay, does it benefit white or does it benefit black? They'll just make the trade thinking, okay, pawn for pawn, it's equal, when actually it's not quite that simple. So the reason I mention this is because it's to show that this is more than just an openings course, and it won't just improve your results like as a short term, okay, we're punishing their mistakes, but it'll also make you a much stronger player by seeing how to punish their mistakes in the opening. You'll be a lot better at doing that in the middle game and in the end game as well. As for the actual suggestions, basically I do recommend the Scotch Gambit. I'm not going to give away everything, but just to give a little outline, I do recommend the Scotch Gambit against E4, E5. I present a few alternative move orders you can use to reach the same positions, but this is the cornerstone of it, where we're typically aiming knight f6 with e5 and fighting for initiative in this way. And what I found is that in the significant majority of games between players rated below 1800 on Lichess, black was ending up in a much worse position out of the opening if white knew a couple of little ideas, which of course I do present in the course and more. Also, another thing I'd say as well is that one thing I find with a lot of different online resources, they will often not really explain the moves much. Like it'll just be, yeah, just play this, and you win. Or it's going to be, let's say, just a very short general explanations like white develops the bishop, but not really going deeper into, okay, what are we actually aiming for in a position? So I'd also say that if you do really like having the moves fully explained and having it where it's very easy for you to kind of revise the ideas and to really remember the moves in your own games, to have that full retention, then I believe that this is also going to help a lot, because this course will help a lot. Because yeah, it will. What I've done is I haven't just have the training videos, and I don't just have the very detailed PGN files like explaining literally every single move in the variation, so you can fully understand it. But I also have these quizzes as well, where you can easily test your memory for each video, so that then you can make sure you remember the key ideas, understand them, and then apply them successfully in your own games. Now, against other systems, against C5, the point machine system that I recommend is the Alpen Sicilian. And I know from my own experience of playing this in my own games, as well as seeing a lot of students and, of course, looking at the Lichess Opening Explorer, which was my reference for making this a really statistically based repertoire. Okay, these are the moves that'll score best against your opponents, rather than just doing it on a whim like everyone else seems to do. But this basically is the evidence to show, okay, C3 just scores very, very well below 2000. Very few of your opponents are going to know that you should play knight f6 or d5 in this position. Actually, even after d5, I still feel like white is slightly better. Only knight f6, I think, fully equalizes for black. But it's the sixth most common move for black, and it's not even like close. Like moves like knight c6, d6, e6 are way more common. And so you're just going to get a very nice advantage very quickly in a lot of games, just playing d4 and simply taking over the center for free. So if they play e6, actually, I'm recommending a gambit in the advanced French. I don't want to give away the gambit because I think it's good to give you like some incentive, to look at what is inside the course, right? But yeah, it's a gambit that actually has only become popular in the last couple of years, but is actually causing problems even at the grandmaster level. And when I was looking at how people below 800 were playing against it, at lower levels, that I was just getting really good positions in virtually all the games. So it was pretty encouraging for us. And also, one thing I think that's also worth noting is that one thing that really, I know I've said this before, but one thing also distinguishes my course is that it really is very focused on, okay, this is what you're going to face most often in your games based on the statistics of many, many millions of games between players around your rating and a little bit above, a little bit below, on the Lichess Opening Explorer. So it means that, even if a move is, let's say, maybe not that great according to the computer, but you're going to see it a lot more than the other moves, then I'll actually make that move the main line and really focus on it to help you really be ready for dealing with it. And of course, it's try to also mention, okay, this is a move that's given us the best, but I thought mention it more as like a theoretical, okay, this is the extra information, say, when you've used the course to, boost your rank 100 to 200 points and you're at that 800 plus level, there's like the extra bit of theoretical information to keep on improving your repertoire and get close to that 2000 level, but it's there more as a bonus than as the main focus of the course. Like this course is really for you guys, not for the reviewers, as my friend Cyrus Lakdawala would like to say. In any case, also against the Scandinavian, I think you're going to really like the setup I recommend, where it's going knight f3 and just playing a very simple and clear setup where, if black tries to play it the way they normally do in the Scandinavian, they actually end up in a really bad position quite fast. Black has to play extremely precisely just to not be like much worse out of the opening, and very few of your opponents are going to know how to deal with it from my own experience. And then also I mentioned like all of these lines I recommend I have played in quite a significant number of my own games, some over the board, but also quite a lot on chess.com against players actually around the rating that you will be facing of different levels. So it's going to really give you a clarity of, okay, I've actually tested these ideas myself to confirm, the statistics are in lead chess that these are indeed very effective weapons. Also against c6, I recommend the fantasy variation, which is I know that a lot of Caro-Kann players really struggle against because they can't just like put their bishop on f5 or g4 like they do in all the other Caro-Kann lines. They have to think for themselves a bit more. And in general, when your opponent has to think for themselves, that's usually when they will start making mistakes. So that's a bit of an overview of the different repertoire options. And okay, I think when you sort of titled, you probably knew from the start that I would suggest like my own resource, of course. But it's because I really put my heart and soul into it. And more importantly, it is very specifically targeted on this is how you beat these players who are rated below 1800. These are the traps that they fall for. These are the strategic ideas you can use to outplay them. These are the typical mistakes they make on a more strategic as well as tactical level and how to punish them. And once you've got that in your grasp, it's only a matter of time until you're well above 1800 yourself and ready for that next level. So anyway, if those of you who want to know a bit more, of course, I've included a link in the description below with a nice free sample where you can try out a part of the course for free, see how you like it, and then buy the full course if you enjoyed that. So that's all from me for now, and I will see you guys in the next training. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. You got it.